Working on the International Space Station is a dream that most kids foster during childhood, but only a handful manage to fulfill. But even for those who do end up in space amongst the stars, it's impossible to ignore the risks that come with it. One such risk forced multiple astronauts to hide until the threat had passed at the ISS. Here's all you need to know about the satellite explosion that forced the International Space Station astronauts to take shelter in escape capsules. First up, what happened? On Monday morning, November 15th, astronauts inhabiting the International Space Station were forced to take refuge in a pair of specific space capsules. This was because of an unidentified cloud of smoke debris that threatened to pass near their orbiting outpost. This, of course, unleashed chaos both on and off the space shuttle. But since these astronauts and mission control officers are all trained for high-risk situations, quick work was made out of telling the astronauts to take shelter in the capsule. So in the event that a collision was to occur, they could conveniently undock from the space station and return to Earth as quickly as possible. The crew was in these space capsules for about 2 hours, according to NASA. Next, what caused the space cloud? The space cloud was just a term used for a giant cloud of dust and debris that the International Space Station identified around their orbiting outpost. NASA claims that there are more than 1,500 pieces of traceable debris orbiting amongst the cloud, with an estimated hundreds of thousands of smaller, untraceable particles floating, now orbiting the Earth as well. An immediate source was not identified, but it was later revealed that it was caused by a Russian weapons test that consciously destroyed a Soviet-era satellite, Kosmos 1408. Fortunately, the crew was brought to safety but was advised to close the shutters to certain modules on the station since the debris cloud may have tiny fragments that could potentially infiltrate the spacecraft, as unlikely as that may be. Now let's go over who was involved and present at the International Space Station. During the emergency, NASA astronauts Tom Marshburn, Raja Shari, and Kayla Barron, along with Matthias Maurer of the European Space Agency, found shelter in the Crew Dragon spacecraft. On the other side, Russian cosmonauts Anton Skloparov, Pyotr Dubrov, and NASA astronaut Mark Vandehei found refuge in their Soyuz capsule. When the crew members re-emerged from their respective spacecraft, they were advised by mission controllers to keep the hatches between the main space station modules shut as a precaution. So, who caused the space cloud? After discussing the object that caused this mild space calamity, let's talk about who specifically caused the aircraft to blow up. Well, Ned Price from the State Department stated that the explosion was caused by Russia testing a missile against one of its own satellites, more specifically, the Direct Ascent anti-satellite missile. Russia confirmed that it was indeed a test conducted, but refused any suggestion dictating that it posed a real threat to astronauts. Secretary of State Antony Blinken did not hold back when going after the Russians when he said that the test obviously demonstrated that Russia was willing to jeopardize the long-term sustainability of outer space and imperil the exploration and use of outer space by all nations through its reckless and irresponsible behavior. Despite the fact that they vehemently rejected the idea of weaponizing outer space. That isn't even all. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson said that he was outraged, but knew that Russia's long and storied history in human spaceflight meant that it was unthinkable to presume that Russia will willfully endanger both the American and international partner astronauts on the ISS, but also their own cosmonauts. In return, Moscow's defense ministry claimed that the U.S. knew for certain that the resulting fragments would not and did not pose a real threat to any orbital stations, spacecraft, and space activities in terms of both test time and orbital parameters. It seems as though they're insistent on downplaying the entire scenario, claiming that the orbit of the object, which forced the crew today to move into spacecraft according to standard procedures, has moved away from International Space Station orbit, and that the station was in the green zone in a tweet. Russia came back and accused the U.S. of blatant hypocrisy for their self-aggrandizing statements condemning the event, and claimed that the U.S. itself, China, and India had all conducted similar experiments in the past. Next, how people in authoritative positions reacted. U.S. Army General James Dickinson, who is commander of the United States Space Command, also jumped on the bandwagon, condemning this experiment, claiming that the resulting debris from this experiment will continue to pose a threat to the events that might take place in outer space for years to come. In his statement, he also blatantly stated that Russia had demonstrated a conscious disregard for the security, safety, sustainability, and stability of the domain of space for virtually every nation on the globe. He claimed that the act itself was simply irresponsible, since the activities that take place in space underpin our way of life. In a contentious manner, though, he stated that they had hoped for a more stable and predictable relationship with Russia, but hope is not a strategy, and now they would be more cautious and keep their eyes open for the Russian Federation's actions these coming weeks. Since tensions are already so high in matters concerning the US and Russia, this has the possibility of escalating to bigger issues. But so far, there have been only condemnations and this mildly disguised threat by Ned Price. We are going to continue to make very clear that we won't tolerate this kind of activity. Bill Nelson also stated that the incident was unconscionable and that the satellite fragments threaten the lives of all the astronauts currently inhabiting space, including 7 members from the International Space Station, 3 crew members on China's Tiangong space station. The untraceable fragments caused by the explosion were mostly less than 3 inches in diameter. But how does one shoot a satellite into space in the first place? Well, to achieve this feat, one needs an anti-satellite weapon, also known as an ASAT weapon, which is essentially just a super high-tech space weapon that can shoot down satellites, as the name suggests. These ASAT weapons can be launched from the ground up or even be situated in orbit up in space. Unfortunately, though, it's been long predicted that the domain of space may become a new favorite for warfare, since we've increasingly been relying on satellites for GPS, telecommunications, and even weather forecasts. And although, in theory and fiction, space wars are super cool, if they were carried out in real life, all hell would break loose. In an unfixable way, in fact. We're sure you can imagine how devastating it might be for a technology-dependent military if just the right satellite was taken out. As mentioned before, so far, only China, India, the United States, and now Russia have managed to successfully shoot down their own satellites. Apparently, it's very easy to cause damage in space, as Meg H's tweet about hypervelocity demonstrated. Her tweet captioned, "This is what happens to aluminum when hit by a half an ounce, a piece of plastic going 15,000 miles per hour in space," was accompanied by a picture of a large aluminum blocked, absolutely destroyed in the front. But where does the debris go? Now, you might be wondering where all the fragments and particles from these explosions go after the act has been committed. Well, if you're presuming that they may just stay in orbit forever, you'd be wrong. Jonathan McDowell, an astronomer from Harvard, said the first few pieces of debris would most likely start falling back into the atmosphere in a few months. In fact, he said it could take up to a decade. That's 10 years for the cloud to completely clear up. Some of this debris can burn up in the atmosphere on its way to Earth. According to NASA, at least a single piece of debris from space has been falling on the Earth each day for the past 50 years. And despite this, no significant property damage has come out of it. Dmitry Rogozin meeting NASA representatives. On Monday, Russia's state media reported that the Director General of Kosmos was set to meet with NASA representatives on Tuesday, November 16th, 2021, to discuss the events of the past day. On November 18th, the Roscosmos CEO noted that in his conversation with Chief Bill Nelson, they addressed the issues related to the area of their responsibilities, which is first and foremost the safety and steady development of the ISS, and also that currently there exists no threats to either the development of the International Space Station or the crew safety that's aboard the spacecraft. Reports also claim that in these conversations, Dmitry Rogozin would discuss the issue of reapproachment between the International Space Station and the space debris that occurred on Monday with the representatives of the U.S. Department in Moscow. According to Rogozin, the NASA Associate Administrator Robert Cabana and the Program Manager of the ISS, Joel Montalbano, were to participate in these talks from the American side. It was also reported that the International Space Station approached space debris several times on Monday by the Mission Control Center in Houston. And that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed watching the video, be sure to leave a like and comment down below. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to get notified every time we post a new video.